So Jimmy, are you in Indiana?
I am, yes.
How
Yeah,
are you?
I grew up here with Herbie, and I lived in Virginia for a year, and then I lived right outside of DC for a couple years, and
Hmm.
then moved back to Indiana about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Are you enjoying it?
Frequently, sometimes.
Once
That's
you leave Indiana, is it a little hard to come back?
it's it's so hard. Yeah,
Okay.
there aren't a lot of good restaurants here. Um,
Are
it's
there any?
Here's
they're,
Paula. Here she goes.
they're,
Okay.
they're two they're two good restaurants.
Mhm.
There are two good ones.
Yeah.
What great? Which ones?
There's a Thai one. It's called T-Rack.
Mhm.
It's um, it's kind of near campus anyway.
So that's new since I left.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
probably within the last 5 or 6 years, I think it
Okay.
showed up. And then Naps and Josephine's are run by Nick Karras, who's
Paula,
Hi,
hello.
I'm trying to get you on my computer too, so it's easier. Like,
You
what the
I'm on
heck?
your cell phone.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I know that's a pain, so I'll try to get you on
No,
my
you can
computer.
do either one. You're just small. That's all. You're just little Paula.
How are you, gorgeous? You
Good.
look
How are
wonderful.
you? This is my Spitfire friend Paula from Indiana. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, how you doing?
Hello.
Good to meet you.
You too.
Yeah.
Paula Good, is that your last name, Good?
It is Mrs. Good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Cool.
I was bad
That's
before I got married.
Paula, you were bad after you got married too, baby.
Yes, yes. I'm even worse now.
Gosh.
Come on.
Well, we can get started. Everybody's here. Paula, you can keep it there if you have to. It's not a pain.
No worries. I'll keep it until I get you guys on the other one, and then
Okay,
I'll drop off
okay.
and come back on.
Okay. Okay, we're calling this venue, this panel, No Pain, No Plate for Hate. And it's
Yeah.
about Herbie, what he went through. If you read the flyer, you know what he went through when he was in New York working, and the prejudice and the stuff that was going on. And so he turned it into, Paula, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Jimmy, the rest of you should be. So somebody painted a picture of a black face and called him Gumbo.
Yes.
Oh,
And so,
Lord.
yeah. And so, and I like the way his response was to it, because he's turning it into a scholarship fund for other African American, Black and brown kids who are coming up in this in the culinary world, because they face the same prejudice. I mean, Herbie had worked for this organization. He worked for with Morgan Stanley. And so they move him around. He worked for Tiffany. Sometimes he works at the Met, like different venues. But this one place he worked at, somebody drew this gumbo and left it on his desk in his office. And so when he went to the his who? Yeah, when he went to his supervisors, they just sort of played it off and didn't do anything about it. And so then when he started talking to the other African American and brown kids, they were like, we go through this too. We didn't know we were going through this. So the scholarship fund want to educate and give money to the Black and brown kids, so that they can get educated and learn how to function, because he didn't know that all of them were so depressed about it until he started talking about it. It was a hush-hush thing. So this is what we're talking about today. And one of the things he wanted me to ask you guys was, and he said, apart from the affirmative action, what's one way to level the playing field for advancement and mutual respect amongst his peers? Apart from the affirmative action, what's one way to level the playing field for advancement and mutual respect amongst peers? Other people are going to hear this panel. And so what could you speak into that? And then you can.
I would say, when you said for advancement and mutual respect, so when you talking about advancement, I think that I think that we're approaching a time, particularly here in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
to where we know that there we're not only dealing with issues of race, but we're dealing with issues of genderism as well.
Yes.
When you look at the income level between both men and women, there's a great gap, and it needs to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
But so when you talk about advancement, I think that there's some things that need to change in terms of the corporate agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Mhm.
the executive staff, the top level, those people that are in key leadership positions, they need to be very intentional about leveling the playing field in
Mm-hmm.
terms of advancement, so that we can have a corporation that looks like this country,
Right.
and not just a group of people that are, and to me, when I say look like this country, I'm saying people, both sexes, meaning male and female, Latino, Asian, Black, white, Indian, just a melting pot of people. But I think companies have to be intentional about that in terms of advancement. But mutual respect is something that I think, one, you can't legislate that. I think mutual respect is something where people have to look inwardly and realize that they do, in fact, may have some type of biases.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's if you look at a lady and don't see her as your equal, so that's something that you have to deal with in your heart. I also think that mutual respect is, once again, it can't be legislated. You have, as a person, you have to change. You have to be willing to make that change and recognize people as human beings, and not just look at the color of a person's skin or make very derogatory statements, as our president has, as it relates to a female. Some of that stuff was very painful, unacceptable, and I just think that in that particular environment, I just think that we have to say that some things are just not going to be accepted, and we need to change. We don't need to follow the status quo. We need to be intentional about making these changes, and be purposeful about doing this, and don't worry about whether we're going to hurt people's feelings, because I think that we're living in a time now things just have to change, both for people of color, particularly African Americans in the United States, and particularly women, because women have been, they've received the blunt of a lot of abuse in this country. And it's sad. And in order to move forward, we have to be intentional. We have to be intentional about changing these things on a corporate level. And we've got to do it, and we got to do it fast.
Right. Do you think a part of this, it's a good thing, a part of this scholarship fund could go towards educating people that would be a good place to put it towards educating people?
I think you can, in terms of, doing what you're doing, having these Zoom meetings. But I think we can talk about it. I think that dialogue needs to take place. But if his intentions, with the money is to help kids, in terms of working in that field and trying to open doors, I say, yeah. But I think that something that can be used in terms of helping people or educating people is to bring people together and talk about these things.
Right.
Education is definitely needed, because culturally there's a difference that needs to take place. And how do you just narrow this gulf? You narrow this gulf by sitting down and talking and learning from each other. And that is, you're right, that's a part of that educational process. And I mean, he can, I think that, if it's his desire to want to help train children in the field, yeah, I think that's a good thing. But I think he needs to be more intentional, or we as a people in this country need to be more intentional about just having more meetings, Zoom meetings, considering the pandemic with COVID. But I think we need to have these hard conversations and be intentional about making change and walking away from these these opportunities that I call them to receive education and learn about people, learn about different cultures, and walk away with knowing that you receive something where you can change. I think we all can change to some degree. We need to be educated. There's more that I need to know in terms of being, and I've been more intentional even with employees that work for me that are female. I've made some changes just this month. We're creating opportunities, financial opportunities with the company that I work for. I'm an executive over the sales department in the company that I work for, and I've made some moves in terms of increasing income for some of the females there at the company that I work for, with giving them the same commissions as some of the men, because I think they deserve that. I think that's equitable. They do the same work. They work just as hard as they do. But I just talking and sitting and listening in the meetings, in the sales meetings, and hearing their voices and them saying that they don't feel that it's fair.
Right.
But that's where education comes in and say, hey, I need to change. I need to sit down with the ownership, the other executives, and we need to correct this. This is wrong.
Right.
This is wrong, and that's what we need to do.
Right.
Just on every level,
Even
as it relates to just like I said, people of color, Black people, females, Latino, Asian, etc. Yeah.
Kimball, what would you add to that, Jimmy?
What I would say is this, and I appreciate Jimmy's really gentle way of coming at things. I'm a bit more militant, and having been in retail and different businesses, and having worked for Lexus, people are very protective of their brand because their brand means money. And so, unfortunately, larger corporations are only pivot when you embarrass them and their brand is being affected. And that is the truth. There are, think about just in the last 2 weeks, I don't know if you've all been following what's been going on the Ellen show. That has hurt her brand so much. And story after story after story comes out. And that's what I'm finding is that, even if it's as a believer or as just a human being, once you hear someone's story, that is what touched their heart. And if their heart can't be touched by the story or by education, you legislate it. You make it illegal to do this or do that, where it will hurt their bottom line. Maybe it will be their wallet. And so what I think needs to happen, and just from a standpoint of what this generation moves toward, is video and story. And imagine a compilation of what all of these chefs have gone through and their simple truth of how it actually hurts a human being. I hate what happened to George Floyd, but if he had to die, it has spawned he was a seed that was buried, and all of this stuff has come up. We would have never known about Breonna Taylor. We would have never known about the other young man, the Latino guy who was in handcuffs with his hand behind his back, and the cop shot him center mass. He was already subdued, crying, begging for his life. And so I would say Herbie's story and all of the people who work around him, that's a small niche, but the chef that works in LA needs to hear those stories to know he's not around. The one that works in Florida, the one that works in Arizona, the single mother in Michigan, maybe even the ones who work at Waffle House, who make less than minimum wage. Their stories could be so powerful because truthfully, affirmative action is only as good as you apply it.
Yes.
And people only apply it when they're embarrassed.
Yes.
And that's what I would say.
Jimmy, what would you add to this?
I agree with both what Harry and Kimball said. I think with this, it's important to remember that we're fighting against hundreds of years of oppression, and so that's
Right.
something that is so ingrained in this country.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, my cat is meowing at
That's
the
okay.
Mhm.
and so it's something that's so ingrained in our country that I feel like education at some kind of curriculum in the schools that is
Mhm.
very overarching and broad, that teaches that there is still prejudice, there still is racism, it's alive and well. Growing up in Indiana, I was not, it was a very monochromatic town, and so I just was very oblivious and naive and unaware. And so it took moving to Virginia and outside of the city for me to see what was still going on, what was still very apparent to people of color every single day of their lives.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of places that are like Indiana, you either assume that there's nothing going on, or the other option is that you were fed these ideas from your parents or your grandparents, and they have,
Or you just don't care.
or you just don't care. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you might have these negative stereotypes that are in no way accurate, and it just is perpetuated. And then as a result, we get things like what happened to Herbie in New York. And on the one hand, I say that education is the key, but then there's so many educated people in New York City, or supposedly educated, and then something like that happens to Herbie. And so that's discouraging, but at the same time, it's great that Herbie turned that situation around and is
Yeah.
turning it to help others and educating others. And
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's good.
Personally, I mean, I think it's gonna take, this is gonna be, you heard the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
One bite
time.
at a time.
Right.
So, this situations like this, it's gonna take people like ourselves and small pockets, but that have a great impact. I don't think what happened to him was it caught the Lord by surprise. I just believe that because of who he is, the character that he has, and how Jimmy was saying how he was able to take this opportunity and to make it something monumental, and really to expose ignorance. But it's going to take these opportunities, one person, a little, here, a step there, and gradually we'll be able to look this thing in the face and make it submit. Because you're talking years upon years,
Absolutely.
layer upon layer, and people believe that this is right. This is right. It's something emotionally wrong, psychologically wrong,
Mhm.
for anyone to believe or even talk or think like that. That's not normal. But it's going to take these type of conversations and them coming together and creating a mindset to say that this is not acceptable. And the mere fact that he's publicizing it and spreading this information, yeah, he's seeing that there are more people with him than against him. And I venture to say that the person who did, in fact, commit this heinous act, they're watching. And they know
Oh, yes.
that they're not in the majority. And this is becoming a small minority of people.
Right.
And people that have that very small mindset. And the reason why we're dealing with these issues is because they know that they're going to be the minority here in the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah. And the shift is taking place. So whether they like it or not, they're going to have to line up and do the right thing.
Right.
I agree.
I think I agree with Kimball and with everybody. I do think that secrets, just like mold and fungus, grow in the dark. And if you don't
Yeah.
embarrass the brands, if you don't
Yeah.
embarrass these folks, like us all seeing that crazy lady in New York City using, calling the police and strangling her dog while this poor guy's just watching, birds. I mean, look, I know I live in a sheltered town. I understand that. But I still can't believe that if I lived in New York City, I'd feel that was okay. I think when you see something, you have to say something. And I think we have to start embarrassing people. If it comes out, we chop off the fungus
Mhm.
They won't find jobs. They won't find, you can't just,
That's right.
you can't embarrass yourself. You're your brand. And
Right.
if we don't start to stand up for each other just as human beings, this
Mhm.
is wrong, folks.
That's
I
right.
don't care who it is, what color they are, what they've done. We can't allow it. And small town, big town, it's never going to be okay. It's
Right.
not okay. So I think Kim was right. Unfortunately, it's going to take some drastic embarrassment, but you are your brand. You're your logo.
Mhm.
And if you work for a company that's even bigger than that, the shamefulness is they didn't do anything about it,
Right.
that they didn't uncover it and figure it out, because had someone figured that out pretty quick, I'm
Mhm.
sure they wouldn't be working for them anymore. So I agree with you. We've got to root it out and embarrass it, because it's been quiet, and this little secret that's growing in the dark with the mold and the fungus, and we've got to let it go. We've got to expose it, open it up to the light, and say, we're not taking this anymore.
Right. Paula, how did you get like that? She was a breath of fresh air for me in Indiana. I'll just say that part. You really were. You and your
Sharon.
father.
Indiana was no joke.
I know.
No
How
joke.
did you get there? How did you get from, honestly, I'm asking this question. Is this from Dr. Lap? Because her dad was cool too.
Yeah.
Where did you get
I
this?
think it's grow. I mean, I know that even when people are unfortunately raised in bad situations, they have a great way of overcoming those things too. So we have to believe in the goodness of people, or we're going to really sink to our lowest. But
Right.
we can come out of the ashes and make it work. We
Mhm.
just have to come together that way. I really feel like people want to say something. They want things to be. Really don't think people want it to be like this. They're just a little bit afraid to say the wrong thing, and a little bit of afraid that they're not understanding the whole problem.
Okay.
I feel like that. Now, we do have a lot of idiots in the world, that's for
Right,
sure.
right. Mhm.
But we can educate them too. So we
Right.
just have to remember that. But I
Right.
don't feel like it's where you live. I feel like it's what's in your heart.
Right.
Character is very often revealed. It is not built. So we just have to remember that. But, I bet you that lady at Central Park will never do that again.
Right.
No.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
So, I hate that we have to do that, but I think that's what needs to happen. I think
Yeah.
if people are more embarrassed, especially in the cell phone, social media, video situation, where they will think twice about the things they say and do in public, and they should have anyway.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't, say that to somebody in the church pew next to you, what in the heck would you do it when you're driving off in your car?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And it worked. Oh my goodness. I don't know who would ever feel comfortable that way, but clearly we need to root those people out. So almost like a see something, say something video campaign. I agree.
Yeah.
Would be useful as well. And it's
Right.
got to be really direct that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree, Harry. I know you.
I mean, I totally agree. I think we just have to
Thank
be
you, Paula.
intentional about this and exposing. That's what I was saying. I think that as time progresses, time changes. That's one of the reasons why. One thing I know about time will prove all things. And we can't, like Paula was saying, we can't sink to our lowest low. We've got to start seeing the good in people. And we've got to just be intentional about making change. And if you're in a position to make that change, people, you don't have to be in some type of, to be an elected official or to be a person of influence. It starts right here, even in our own neighborhoods.
Right.
Speaking, letting people know that, and if you hear or see something, don't just, bury your head in the sand, say something and let people know that this stuff is not acceptable and we're not going to accept it. And we need to do something about it. And and as we see that even in Oregon, this movement is impacting and affecting change. And a lot of people, in November, we're going to see the result. I think we're going to see many people sign up to vote. And November is going to speak louder than any word. People want change. And people are tired of this old stoic, old Jim Crow mentality. It's sickening. It's utterly sickening, and it's really really embarrassing for this country. And you know, it's time for change. I'm really tired of it. I have a 15-year-old son, and I have to now be concerned about. I'm not so much concerned about where I am, you know, in terms of my legacy. I'm more concerned about my son, my grandbabies, and now it's time to speak up and affect change. Right. And we've got to, like you guys are saying, I totally agree. I remember Martin Luther King was saying that a ride, you know, that's the voice that people need to hear. At first, Martin Luther King was totally against that. He was a nonviolent man, and he believed in nonviolence. But sometimes a ride is the voice of the people. It's the voice of the unheard, making a noise. You know, you heard the old adage, squeaky wheel gets the oil. Absolutely. And we've got to make that type of behavior where people feel like they can call the police or operate in what I consider right fragility as if it's acceptable. It's not acceptable. That's not normal. People are human beings. Treat people thusly and correctly. We're all equal, regardless of the shade of the hue of our skin or whatever if you're a male or female, we're all human beings and we're equal in the eyes of God. So we need to speak up. And if it is to embarrass somebody, so be it. You know, it's time. It's time to bring change.
Well, if they're embarrassing themselves, then they're embarrassing themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody actually put on Facebook, they said they can't wait for this racism stuff to be over, this talk. And I had said, you all heard this saying, because they're like tired. The racism, we should be glad that we have as much as we have now, is essentially what they were saying. And I said, you know what? Well, you're going to be real mad in a little bit because this is not a moment. This is a movement.
Right.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, you might as well give up now.
I bet you're sick of it too.
You're right.
That you said, I can't wait for it to be over too.
Right, exactly.
They thought that they were being inconvenienced, but they're not the ones on the receiving end of it. So
exactly.
And but believe, a lot of what we're experiencing, I firmly believe we've got to make a change on a political level, and it starts there. We've got to create. There has to be a country that looks like the people, and it doesn't look like the people. Right. When you look at the number of senators in this country,
right?
I mean, it's pathetic. There, and I have to call it what it is. I think there's probably one black senator, in this country, and you have people, and we've got to change. We've got to change the term. How long these guys are allowed to operate in these positions?
Yes.
And those guys they're there and they're not changing. Yes. A lot of them are closet racist, and they know the lingo. They say the right thing to get what they want, but when it's time to produce, if you look at their track record, if you go and look at how they vote, they don't even vote for poor white people or poor black people. They are pro-rich and wealthy, the wealth of the top 3%. And it is proven and it is documented. When you do a $2 trillion stimulus package and 85% of that wealth goes to the top 3%, there is something wrong. Right. There is something wrong. There's a poor people's campaign. I'm trying to think of the bishop's name that I totally support.
William Barber.
Yes.
North Carolina.
And people don't want to talk about the silent people. And there are a lot of people that are in this country that are white people that are poor. There are more poor white people than there are black people.
Exactly.
And people don't talk about that. And these senators, you've not heard anybody address poor people, period. And it's tragic. It is utterly tragic, and then, they want people to be excited about a stimulus check. Man, what? Are you joking?
That's
I
not
mean,
building wealth.
no,
It's not
it's
building
not. It's
wealth.
not. It's not building wealth. And those type of people have to be removed from office. You know?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I remember when I was in college at IUP, Sharon, I think you were at Punxsutawney, but there was someone was robbed or someone, and the Indiana police came and rounded up all the black men on campus.
Oh wow.
Short ones, light skinned, tall, dark, medium. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. They rounded even Levi. Remember Levi?
Yeah.
Lethal Levi, who was a star basketball player at that time. He was amazing. They grabbed everybody because someone said they saw someone who looked black do something.
Wow.
And it was devastating. I know of at least 3 or 4 that never came back to college because of the treatment there.
Right.
And so,
And that was how long ago?
Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Oh, shut up, Kendall. You said we were in college. Shut up. Shut up. Yeah, but that kind of stuff is still
over
taking
30
place.
years ago.
It is.
We're talking, but we still, experience so many different things. Remember, it took Paul and I a year and a half to find an apartment, someone who would lease to us. And I had to have a white friend go and represent and be the face
Oh
for
wow.
us even to get in the door. I slept on Jackie and Brenda's couch for a year and a half while people were no. It was totally illegal.
Right.
And so and I agree with Paula, it's not where you are, but where you are, you do need to be a micro influencer.
Yes.
Exactly like she said. If you see something, you be louder than them.
Yeah.
You embarrass them so much. My particular a niche where I believe the Lord has called me is in churches. We have a lot of Karens in churches. The woman in Central Park, she belonged to her church for 10 years.
Right.
Multicultural church. I don't know if you saw it. It was about a year ago. There's a restaurant here called Bonefish Grill. And this would interest all the chefs because there was a woman there and there were a group of black women and she said they were being too loud. And so she told them, shut up, shut up, shut up. And they were like, we're not being any louder than anyone else here. And so they turned on the recorder and they just sat there and she just lost her mind. This woman, she started throwing the N-word around. And I mean, she really had a crazy meltdown. She is an elder at one of the biggest churches in Raleigh.
Yes. Yep.
She's an elder. And so this is my niche. And so since Herbie is looking for his particular niche, it would be so good to get his own channel where it would be safe for other chefs and other people in food related kind of industries. Like production. Why can't we get a product from Latinos and the Asians into these large, amazing, restaurants? Why do they have to be a hole in the wall and try to beg for a Michelin star? Why do the Michelin stars go to the same people over and over and over? The same way the Oscars do, the same way the Emmys do. Even Meryl Streep says she's sick of herself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to have not just his statement, but an expo, somewhere. I mean, what is more diverse than New York?
Right.
An expo where all of these people who show their talents, who show their amazing skills, who do, foods maybe we've never even heard of.
Right.
Something that gives them exposure, something that makes so much noise that they cannot be ignored.
Right, exactly.
The misplaced chefs, or the misplaced plates.
Yeah. I mean, my prayer is that Jimmy, you don't have that flyer, do you? With the black face on it? Because Herbie's doing aprons and
Who is he?
T-shirts and everything here. They're going to be for sale, and I love the fact that the person who drew this, that he's going to make money off of this for the scholarship fund.
Yeah.
Too.
Right.
You can't be sued. he can't be sued and say it was my artwork, because now
Right.
you won't be sued for doing that artwork.
Right,
Call
exactly.
himself out as an idiot.
Yes, right, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I need some speaking truth to power. Come on.
I mean, I think that, when you think about what he's dealing with, it's
Hold it back a little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
See, that's
yeah.
the black face that somebody drew. I don't know if you've seen this, Paula.
Wow.
I
You
did.
see that?
I couldn't believe that. I just cannot
sorry.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy to me that someone would get away with that.
Yeah.
I do hope, that it would be exactly what would occur if they would say that's my artwork. That would just prove the idiot.
Yeah.
idiocy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something. I'm sorry, Harry. Go ahead.
No, but what I was saying, I mean, I think, it does hurt. It is stinging, but because of his giftedness and his creative ability,
Mm-hmm.
you talk about how he's making shirts and all of these things. I think that's appropriate,
Right.
but with this is an opportunity to affect change.
Right.
He's a perfect person in the industry that he's working in, and it's just time for that. It's really time to bring together those group of people, meaning the chefs or whatever they're whoever's involved in there, and then let's just let's showcase your talents. But no, let's deal with the elephant in the room.
Right.
Let's deal with this racism.
Mm-hmm.
Is it equitable for women in that business? Are
Right.
they allowed the same opportunities? What about men, black men? What about black women? Let's deal with this, because I think that when there's a stone turned over, it's turned over because there's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
And he's dealt with racism, and it needs to be dealt with.
Right.
And he's more open and verbal about it, but it's happened. I'm sure on numerous occasions.
Yes.
But everybody else has just turned a blind eye.
Yes.
But he's taken this opportunity and created a platform to expose this, and it
Right.
needs to be exposed. It needs to be dealt with,
Right.
because when you take the young man, the young kid, I think that was not allowed to eat at a restaurant because of the clothes that he had on, and there was a white kid that had on
dressed
the same
exactly the same.
gear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was in Baltimore.
So we're still dealing with.
That was in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
still dealing with, I mean, you can't get away from it. It's just got to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you that if he dealt with it in his industry, this is a restaurant
Mhm.
that did this. So I'm talking about this kid. I think is probably 11 or 12 years old. This is a restaurant. This is a manager that did. So how many people think like that? And it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with
Exposed.
swiftly. Yeah,
Mhm.
it does.
I'm so glad
and
his mother was recording that, and she
Yeah.
called the restaurant out. She got his face, and she got the picture of the white kid outside in the same clothes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
He was inside.
Well,
Yeah.
when you think about the Me Too movement, let's if he's to head this up, let's reach out all across the country in the world and say, hey, let's talk about this. Who else has this happened to? Has it happened in France? Has it happened in England? We definitely know in the United States. Let's all come together collectively. Let's talk about this and address this and expose this on a larger scale.
Mhm.
And I think we'll be surprised at the results that come, because it's in every corner, every industry, and now it's just a time to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time. It's time
The
to deal with this.
ignorance got to be exposed. I mean, I had shared this on one of the other Zooms. There was a friend of mine who she said she was at the dollar store with a friend of hers who was a medical doctor. And so they were standing in line and distancing themselves, you're supposed to be 6 feet apart And so she said when her friend who was a black doctor went up to the register, the lady at the register said, "We don't take food stamps."
Wow.
And she watched her friend. She went back to the car and she waited for her friend, who was a white woman, came when she was done purchasing what she was purchasing. She went to the car and she said, "How come you didn't say anything to that lady at the register?" And so she said, "Because that happens all the time." She said, "What am I?" She said, "I would be fighting all the time." And so her friend who was white said to her, "I never knew this." Now they had been friends for years, but she never knew what this girl was going through.
Mhm.
And she
Yeah.
said, I never knew that. She said, I just thought we were friends. She's black, I'm white, and I was glad. And I would say I wasn't prejudiced. She said, but I didn't know her life and what she was going through. And I
Mhm.
think with these cameras and things that are being being exposed, I think now you can look into it and you can close your eye to it, or you can say, is this really what's going on? Because it's not
Yeah.
enough to just say I'm not prejudiced. That's not enough.
No,
It's
What
not.
are you doing
No.
what are you doing to help? What are you speaking to? How are you using your white privilege?
Right.
Mhm.
You know,
That's the reason
because
why I
it's
love.
there. I
Yeah,
don't
I
think we
love.
should
I
be
love. I
ashamed of
love
it.
the. Yeah, I mean, I love that we have Jimmy here and Paula, and it's going to take all of us collectively
Yes.
to be able to say, I'm sorry, you're white, or whether you're black or Asian or whatever the case is, we don't agree with that. We
Mhm.
have people that are standing beside us that are Asian, that are white, that are black, that don't agree with your behavior.
Right.
Because you're white, we don't stand with you. That's wrong. I was in Alabama. I had to take care of some business. I had one of the sales managers that worked for me, and he's a white young man. And we were we took a client out to eat lunch. We were in Alabama, and I was sitting there at the table, and my cell phone kept ringing. So, I was taking phone calls, and he was sitting directly in front of me. So I never forget what happened. This is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were sitting there. One of the operations managers, or one operations manager from this company, was sitting to my left. My salesman was sitting in front of me. One of the VPs was sitting directly across from me. This young lady, she's a white young lady. She looked to be about 22, 23 years old. We ordered our food. She brought the food over. She handed them all of them their plate. Now, I'm watching all of this. She gives them their plate. She hands me my plate last. Everyone's drinking. We're talking business. So she asked everyone at the table if they want a refill, and they did not acknowledge me at all.
Mhm.
Now I'm the black guy with the company credit card paying for the meals for 15 people.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this, Ryan, the guy that worked for me, was upset.
Mhm.
So he was really upset. It didn't bother me because I knew that I've learned just certain areas demographically where you kind of expect certain behavior.
Right.
And the thing that was embarrassing for her at the very end of it, now you sit here and you tried to you were not being very cordial or friendly, but she was being racist.
Mhm.
And I had to tap the guy, the manager that worked for me. I tapped his foot under the table because Ryan is a very vocal person.
Mhm.
He was sensitive to what was going on. And I said, no, I was tapping him and I shook my head. I said, no, because we were there in front of our clients. And I know that he wanted to address the situation. I said, no, it's not time for this.
Mhm.
So at the very end of this, I gave her my company credit card. She she asked me, for a tip.
Mhm.
So how much tips do you want to put on your card? Now, there was I think it's about 20 of us. I gave her, a decent tip, but I thought to myself, I said, now, because of your attitude, because you had an issue at this restaurant with this person, you don't know me, you know nothing about me, but because of the conditioning environment that you were raised in, that you made this move. And I would have given her a lot more than she received, but it was just so inappropriate.
Mhm.
And looking at that, and the reason why I brought that up is to say that it is woven in the fabric of certain businesses, particularly that business that Herb is in, that needs to be dealt with. That's
Right,
not the
that's right.
chefs.
Mhm.
It's the management. It's the
Yes.
waiters. It's the
Yes.
waitresses. And
Yes.
I think he's a voice that needs to be that needs to be heard to speak to all of this,
Mhm.
and
Right.
say that this is not right on any level.
Mhm.
I dealt with it appropriately, but I thought I brought that up because I thought about that. I said, man, this is a systematic issue, not only in the kitchen, but in the management, because there was a manager at the restaurant in Baltimore that turned that young baby around, that little black boy around. You know, it was a servant that waited on me that didn't even ask me if I wanted a refill, but she did ask for a tip. You know,
Right.
so that's interesting stuff, and people need to change. And we can legislate certain things, but we cannot legislate someone's heart, and we've got to talk to that. And people have got to look inside of themselves and realize once you check out of this body, there is a God that you're going to have to stand before. And believe me, God is taking note of all of this. He's taking note of that elder that was in that church that was calling people derogatory names. Yeah, but you're going to have to stand before him. And everybody's going to have to give account for things good and bad. And trust me, you want to make sure that you're on the side of righteousness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
Sharon, something that you said about the woman that went into the store and was asked about the food stamps reminded me of whenever Herbie and I were still in high school, and we might have been at college at that point, but we went to a restaurant, and a group of young looking people who were dressed up came in, and Herbie asked them how was prom, and the group of people just kind of became like really angry and were threatening a fight. And it was a pretty innocent comment, pretty straightforward. They looked like they had just come from prom. And at that point, and for years after that, I didn't realize that they were probably incensed because a black man had asked them something, and they looked like they were maybe from out in the country somewhere. And so it was just, I'm not 100% sure, but since that time I realized why they made such a big deal about it, and why they were threatening a fight, talking about calling their friends.
Oh, wow.
And but again, just like Herbie's doing with this, Herbie put an end to it after being pretty mad. The girls that we were with were crying. The girls that they were with were crying because of just how escalated it had gotten. But what Herbie did in the end was to order their table a round of milkshakes. And so that put an end to it pretty quickly. And but again, that's just Herbie doing what he does. Again, with this situation, turning it around for something.
Yeah.
Right. It was interesting when we lived in Indiana, because he was the homecoming king his year.
Yeah.
And the year that he was homecoming king, the girl that was a homecoming queen was white. They did not put them on the same thing. I don't know if you noticed it, Jimmy. They didn't put
I did, yeah.
They didn't put them
yearbook.
together. Yeah, in the yearbook. They didn't, and they decided, because Herbie and this young girl were friends, they decided that they were going to ride on the same float, even though they didn't put them in the yearbook together. And so it's,
it looked in the yearbook, it looked like the young girl's date was the homecoming king. And then there was just kind of a picture of Herbie kind of thrown in at the last minute. That's exactly what it looked like. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right.
And people could make excuses for that all they want, but you look at the years before and then you look at the years after.
Yes.
And it wasn't like that.
Wow.
And I'm still shocked at the numbers. Howie, a good friend of ours who went to college with us, who teaches the Indiana school district, in the entire Indiana school district, there's only one black teacher.
That shocked me.
Wow.
That shocked me too.
Did you know that, Jimmy?
2020.
Yeah, Mrs. Novell's, I think, is who it is.
It's Novell's, oh really?
Yeah.
One teacher.
Yeah. That's like when I moved to Virginia, and it was like 30% African American, 30% Latino,
Right.
and 40% Asian, Caucasian, etc. But all the teachers were white. All of the support staff, custodian, etc., were African American, and that's just a very poor example of the setup for the school system. Whenever it doesn't reflect the makeup of your student body.
Yeah.
Sends a terrible message to the student.
It does.
It does. When we were in school, believe it or not, Mack Park was still segregated.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
Absolutely.
You keep telling our age, okay?
Okay.
The way you said when we.
Well, I mean, the segregation by law was over, 20 years earlier, but you were warned not to go, and it was very much so. And it's not it is absolutely by design that everyone who's black lives in the Chase.
Right.
It was that is an absolute clear example of redlining.
Mhm.
You know, absolutely. It is unconscionable.
Yep.
But like you know, like we're saying, and you also have to be as strategic
Yeah.
as those above you, because Herbie and those other chefs are separated by
Mhm.
design.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you have to do what happened when police, you know, were segregated, you know, during my father's era, even my cousins who wear the blue, and treated so bad, you know, within their precincts. You know, I forget the top cop's name, but his partner was so mad, he got out of the car, loaded up his gun, and was shooting at the black guy in the car. His
Wow.
partner, his police partner, I forget that, I was just reading it about the other day. And if you read some of the stories of integrating police departments, it would make your skin crawl. But that's why they have the Black Policeman's Affiliation. That's why they have the Latino Policeman's Affiliation, because within precincts, the racism they faced was unbelievable. And so maybe the same thing needs to happen. I was reading about a study when women, they were hiring more women because of the EEOC, and companies got really smart, really slick, and they would put one woman here, one woman there, one woman there. Whenever you're busting up the good old boy system and there's only one of you,
Separate them.
you are a target.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Mm.
hired 1,500 women, but you put one at every location. And these women just went through amazing, just crazy trauma. But if you put 3 in, where you have someone to talk to, you can actually change the culture. You could change, you know, the atmosphere, so to speak. But you have to have allies within the place where you're embedded. And so a good starting point, and this is just my humble opinion, would be those chefs to not just give lip service. I mean, they're doing all of that great stuff they're
Right.
selling, but they need to create a coalition.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
They need to
That's
create
really
a
good.
loud
Yes. Yes.
voice.
Yes.
Mhm.
A
Right.
loud, I don't know who, maybe one of their brothers, cousins, sisters, in-law is a producer for somebody's show. For crying out loud, they're in New
Right.
York. They know macro influencers. We are just micro.
Right.
You know, we influence 20, 30, 50 people at 100 at a
Yeah.
time.
Right.
They can influence thousands and generation. They know how to do it. I didn't
Right.
last year ago, I didn't know TikTok from a hole in the ground.
Yeah. Right.
You
Exactly.
know, you have to learn it from a 5-year-old.
Right.
You know, and so something like this could be so powerful.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it is very costly.
Mm-hmm.
It costs you sleep. It
Right.
costs you name calling, probably on a
Mhm.
scale you never thought. It
Right.
costs you emotional trauma.
Yeah.
But like John Lewis, you have to think about the people who are coming after you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, initially when this happened to Herbie, we didn't know right away. And when we found out, his dad and I were like, how come you didn't consider getting a lawyer so you could sue them? He was like, Mom and Dad, I have a family. He said, and they're a big corporation. He said, and I need to feed them. It was hard.
Right.
So when it got to this point of he had to strategically think of a creative way to deal with this. And so he said, you know, this is the way. He said, now it's the time for me to do it. But there are organizations in New York, too, who have taken up their organization and said, we want to meet with you and we want to talk to you about the scholarship. It's 2 so far. One is from, because, you know, he graduated from the CIA in New York. And so one organization is from the school. They said, we want to talk to you. So we're just hoping this keeps going, because now that fear in him is gone. It's like, I have to do what I got to do, because I don't want the same, you know, black and brown, you know, men and women to go through what I went through.
Or his sons.
Right. Or his sons. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be great if we could shame Merrill Lynch into underwriting the whole damn thing?
The Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley.
Well,
You say,
whatever.
okay.
Okay.
You got him?
Yes,
You
that would
better.
be. Absolutely. There's an executive in Morgan Stanley now, I saw on the news, who was suing the company because she said, and she's African American, you know, they always have to put one that they can use to do what they want them, you know, to do. And she just came out and she's speaking against what they had her do. She has a lawsuit, what they had her do for African Americans within that company.
Wow.
And so you know.
So
So
she
now,
knows where the bodies are buried.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe he needs to jump into that lawsuit.
Yes, that's what we said to
Get
him.
that action.
Right,
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely.
so,
Sharon, something I said to Herbie was, if you still have a connection with Oprah,
yeah.
John Sinclair's son, I
Mhm.
wonder if she would know any, or if they would know of any leads with that, or
Right.
any direction that that path could go to.
Yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
think of
he's-
Jonathan Sinclair. He still works for Oprah.
Yeah, he
So
does.
that's a good, yeah, that's good. That's
Mhm.
good. Because we want to take this. It's like, it's our time, you know, now
It is.
it is
Yeah.
our
It
time
is.
to do stuff
Yeah.
and not sit back, you know?
It
Or
is.
or Joe Saylor and the Stay Human Band, maybe. I don't know if there's any
Yes.
leads there.
Right, right.
That's
So if there's
great.
any way, anything, Jimmy, you have a connection with Herbie, just keep putting stuff in his
Sure.
ear so
Yeah.
he, you know.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you guys for coming. And I mean, I thank you for
Mhm.
speaking truth, power, truth to power. Right?
Mhm. That's right.
That's right.
Mhm.
I thank you so much. And please, you know, each one, teach one, preach, do whatever you have to do. But we want this to go. I mean, we have to work together. We can't just do it as a black race. We need the white people as
Very
much
we
as
need
the
white
white people need the
allies.
black
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Our insides are the same, but
Right.
you know, we have a mission.
Yes.
We have a
Yes.
mission. So any closing remarks to this? I'll just start at the top. Skip me. We'll go from Harry, Kimball, Jimmy, and to my friend Paula.
Well, I want to say this. You know, if he has an opportunity to watch this, I want to say to him to be
He will.
encouraged. I have such great admiration for who he is and what he stands for. I think it takes a lot of guts and courage to be able to do what he has done to go public with this, because some people suffer in silence,
Right.
and that's not really good, because he's this costs something. But I believe that this can grow into such a powerful statement that it can affect change across his country, across his world, because people have been hiding for too long in his industry. And I want to say this to that person that did do that drawing or whatever cruel words you wrote, that we say thank you.
Right.
And we say thank you. We appreciate you. But I want to say this to you as well, that you need to grow up and you need to change. And if you're a person that has some guts, come and talk to him and let him teach you some things. And Herbie, be encouraged. We support you. Our ministry supports you here in Atlanta. MCM, we support you greatly. I talk to people about your experience, and I think that's something that we need to do all across Facebook. We need to make this public, and we need to tell people about what he's dealing with. But I want to say to Herbie, don't just start with chefs. Let's start with some of the managers, these racist managers. Start with a lot of these racist servants.
Yeah.
Start with a lot of people that are in this industry, and let's affect change and expose this. Sometimes if you can't legislate it, if they're not willing to change, the embarrassment needs to take place.
Absolutely.
And now it's time to embarrass people, because enough is enough.
Right. Kimmy?
Okay, well, I hope Bert does see this. And just want to leave this thought. Those in power use their power to keep their power. But now there's a perfect time to transfer power.
Yes.
And so as it transfers, use it wisely. Use it to uplift so many people. You know, like they were saying, don't just lift this boat, but if you flood the place, all the boats will rise.
Right.
And so be sensitive to the voices, but always, always be outspoken. Always, always fight for the voiceless.
Yes.
Yes.
Please do that.
Yes.
That's what I would say.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Jimmy Rickard?
Yeah, as a white person, it's easy for me to push these issues to the back of my mind. It's not something that I always have to constantly be dealing with. But your issue is my issue, and I stand with you. I hear you, and we need to work to affect change.
Awesome.
Amen. Amen. Paula Good?
Yeah, I agree. I think we are all humans. I don't want to see anybody suffer. I don't want to see anybody persecuted, and we need to find our voices to help you find yours and keep yours at the top. All
Yes.
need to rise. And my favorite quote from Winston Churchill was, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. Courage to continue."
Right.
Yeah, I think right now we all need to have that courage to rise. One race, we all one nation under God, not separate.
That's
You know,
right.
it's a lot of fringe that wants us to be separate, but we all want to be together.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Amen. Thank you so much, guys. Thank for your voice, and thank you for continuing with your voice apart from this panel. There you will. I love you, and my son loves you. I know he will listen to this, and you may hear from him.
All
Good.
right.
Good. We look forward to
So
supporting
what,
you.
Yes.
what is this panel called? No
Plate for hate.
no plate. Let's say it together. No plate.
No plate
for
for
hate.
hate.
There
That's
you
right.
go.
Love it. I love it.
That's right.
Awesome.
Thank you. Give me a high five, everybody. I love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.